Welcome everybody to our first webinar of the year. As I said, it's really nice to see some familiar names in the list, and some newcomers that maybe are new to MarineShift360, maybe just new to me. Yeah, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. Without further ado, let's get started. So, firstly, a little introduction to myself. Hi, I'm Lizzie. For those of you that don't already know me, I'm a project manager at Marine Futures. A little bit on my background. I've spent the last 4 years working and developing and implementing life cycle assessment with MarineShift360, but on the corporate side with Starboard and the IQ Foil Olympic class. So very much on the implementation side of things. But then in January, I came over and joined Ollie and the team at MarineShift360 and Marine Futures. But yeah, so some faces I recognise from my time at Starboard, some names I recognise from Marine Shift, so it's lovely to see you all. I'm going to quickly hand over. Ollie, would you like to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for making the time. So my name's Ollie Taylor. I'm director here at Marine Futures. My background is 15 plus years in the marine industry, working for a range of different manufacturers. And then the last 5 to 6 years, I've been focused purely on life cycle assessment and running the MarineShift360 project. So yeah, really pleased everyone could join. Just a couple of housekeeping points. You'll notice you're all on mute and cameras are off. We will change that at the end when we move to the Q&A section. But in the meantime, if anyone's got any questions or wants to ask something specific, either fire it into the chat or the Q&A, and we will address all questions at the end. We've left about 15-20 minutes for questions, so we positively encourage you to ask questions. Lizzie.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so the agenda for today, Ollie touched on it, but we've split this into 3 sections really. The first bit is a little bit about what's new at MarineShift360. You might have seen a little bit on LinkedIn, etc., of some changes going on behind the scenes and some new programs we've got running. But we'll also, for those of you that are using the tool, share with you some of the latest updates that might be helpful for you and your current LCAs, or for those of you that are looking to get started as well. We'll then go on to a section about unlocking the power of LCA. So this is going to be kind of the main interesting behind the scenes bit of information for you all. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the IMOCA case study and about how they've utilised LCA and the impact that's having internally on their organisation. So that's what we'll dive into. And then, as Ollie mentioned, we will have 15 minutes or so at the end for Q&A. These can be questions on MarineShift, on the tool, on any of the programs we've mentioned, or also about the IMOCA case study as well. So yeah, any questions, put them in the chat and we will make sure to save them for the end as well. All right, what's new? I'm going to hand over to Ollie very quickly to give a little bit of update on what's going on behind the scenes.
Brilliant. So MarineShift, the project, has been running for over 7 years now. It's amazing to think what's been achieved in that time. And we've had really, really good industry engagement over the last 7 years with over 800 users on the platform now. And we've seen over 1,800 LCA studies have been conducted within the tool. So it's definitely having an impact and reach across all segments of the industry. But what we're seeing in the world at large, with increasing speed of climate breakdown and the changes that we all experience day to day, we felt it was time to really double down and refocus our efforts to try and achieve a far larger scale with this project, to enable lots of people access to the tool to start doing the real work of impact reduction in their businesses. As such, we then relaunched the project last November. So some of you may have seen that in the media, with a new partnership. So MarineShift360 continues its own standalone brand, but now 11th Hour and Marine Futures formed a partnership to take the project into the next stage of its life. So who on earth are Marine Futures? This is a new company probably none of you have heard about before. It's a new dedicated marine-focused sustainability consultancy based out of the UK. We've got a team behind us, so I'm kind of leading the organisation, but we've got 5 or 6 of us all involved in this new project and really focusing our efforts around LCA, impact measurement, impact reduction. 11th Hour still remains fully involved, and we have their fantastic support to bring this project to life and make it very, very affordable and accessible for the widest group possible. And with this new partnership, we took the opportunity last year to really try and look at the key barriers that exist in the industry that are preventing this transition to a low carbon economy and kind of a net positive environment that we all need to act in. So we've got 3 key work streams and focus areas now moving forward. So we're continuing to run the LCA tool, and we're investing heavily in the software to improve the usability, make it more affordable and accessible, improve the database, and increase the training assets and resources that sit behind the tool, because the tool is only as good as the person who knows how to use it and operate it. So we've got a big push this year around educational resources. We're going to deep dive on a few different LCA subjects in the webinars that are coming up later in this year. We're creating video assets, we're improving the product manual, and we'll also be looking to run face-to-face workshops, which are linked around kind of key boat show industry events, where hopefully we can do full-day workshops to deep dive into this subject. So we've got the tool, which continues to run, and Lizzie will touch on the new licensing model that we've launched. We've also now launched an Impact Accelerator program, which is focused on supporting innovative companies, products, business solutions that offer the opportunity to reduce the impact of the whole industry. So we're now taking direct action with a number of partners to accelerate their progress, often using LCA. A lot of the innovation technologies that we have been using for the last few years, we're applying it directly in industry to create case studies that show positive change and hopefully inspire everyone in the industry to act in a impact reducing way. And then the third new work stream within the project is our academic outreach program. So we're looking to work much more closely with educational academic institutes to provide the key skills that are required to drive this transition to a low carbon economy. So the next generation of designers, naval architects, engineers, we're now creating resources, supporting in specific course design, and then connecting students with industry problems to try and smooth the connection and transition from academia into industry. So yeah, very exciting new direction for the project. Lots more updates to come over the year, but we thought we'd get this webinar in kind of Q1 of this year to start sharing some of what we're working on. So yeah, back over to you, Lizzie.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for explaining that, Ollie. Let me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so yeah, Ollie touched on it, but the Impact Accelerator is one of the first big updates we've got for this year. It's the first year of this will be annual initiative, and we opened applications at the beginning of December last year. Since then, we received loads and loads of great applications from really innovative projects and organisations that were looking to take control of their impact and progress, and particularly using LCA over the coming year. By the end of January, we've gone through a really in-depth, rigorous selection process, and we are actually almost ready to launch our first 3 members of the Impact Accelerator in our 2025 cohort. Very exciting. But yeah, why does this program exist? So the marine industry has sort of very unique sustainability challenges, and solutions from other sectors don't always translate directly. So we're seeing solutions in automotive and various other industries, energy industries, and they're not all easily translatable to the marine environment. So what we want is to truly decarbonize. We need some really targeted innovations. So the Impact Accelerator has been designed to help the most promising companies, projects, organizations to bring some scalable solutions to the market without cost being a barrier. So through the Impact Accelerator, we're able to provide and support with sustainability expertise, tools, resources for free to help them to develop their sustainability aspects of their organization and to understand the impact of their products and their services. And hopefully we'll get to the end with some really great case studies for how certain organizations have been able to improve and how we can translate that to the wider industry. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll be announcing our selected organizations in the 2025 cohort very soon. And yeah, throughout the program, we will be sharing insights on how they are applying life cycle assessment throughout their projects to drive sort of impact reduction. The goal of this is not, we don't want to gatekeep the process. This isn't about like working with 3 specific companies and no one else. It is about working with those companies to identify solutions that we can use for the wider industry. So keep an eye out. Hopefully we'll be sharing lots of useful tips, advice and examples that you guys can carry over into your own organizations. But yeah, that's a little bit on the Impact Accelerator. The next big project that we'll be launching out this year is going to be the academic outreach program. The idea, this is designed to equip the next generation of marine professionals with the knowledge and the tools to drive real sustainability impact. So we're looking to partner with leading universities and academic institutions to make life cycle assessment and eco-design principles a core part of the design process. So just like 3D CAD, CFD, FEA analysis are all being used and integrated into the design process at a university level, we want to make sure that we're embedding life cycle assessment into that training and into education, so that the students coming out of academia, out of universities, are equipped to handle some of the challenges that we ourselves and organisations in the marine industry are facing. So what you can see is we're trying to connect the brightest minds with the most urgent environmental issues. And we're looking for a variety of different resources and providing a variety of different training resources to actually help make LCA more accessible. We know that, well, the first of all that is to provide some digital resources. So whether that's going to be course guides, online lectures, training videos, virtual like case studies that can be looked at, copied, imitated, learnt from. We'll also be looking to provide lectures, webinars and workshops, so whether they are recorded or live and online like this one, or whether they're going to be in-person workshops, either shorter sessions or full-day workshops in university institutions, within corporations, etc. There will be internship opportunities. So a lot of LCA is a life cycle assessment, and what MarineShift360 offer is a tool. It's not just a guideline or a theoretical framework. It is a specific tool that can be used to solve and to handle real world problems. So a big part of educating and training the next generation of marine professionals in this area is making sure that they turn that theoretical knowledge into practice. And as well as pairing, what we want to be able to offer is be able to provide students with the opportunity to apply their knowledge, but also give the opportunity to corporations to gain from that university knowledge and utilize the resources available, and the students that are learning about LCA to help improve their processes and practices. So the internship opportunities, it's going to be about matching really smart students with great knowledge on LCA with organizations that want to and are like pushing to improve their sustainability credentials. Okay, and then the last one is curriculum development. This isn't just about providing one cohort, 1 year's worth of students with the knowledge on LCA. It's about developing curriculums that can be repeated year after year and improved year after year, so that we're not just getting 1 year's worth of professionals coming out into the wider world with LCA understanding, but that every year we're getting more and more students that understand this, and they are approaching the once they're joining into the marine industry. Why this is all useful to you guys? Well, there's a couple of key points. We'd love you to get in touch if you want to be involved in trialing our academic outreach resources. We will be looking to launch this beginning of next academic year, so September time. And ahead of that, we want to get as many eyes and minds on this as possible. So if you're interested in trying the resources, helping us being a part of that development process, whether you're an academic institution or not, please feel free to reach out. If you're interested in being partnered with a life cycle assessment intern, it doesn't have to be at the stage where you know you've got the resources for this, but if this is something that interests you, let us know, because it'll help us to hopefully drive interest. The more organisations that want to be involved, the more we can pass that on to students and show them that learning about LCA is going to help you with future job opportunities. And then the last one is if you'd like to be featured as one of our case studies. Throughout all of these resources, we want to show real life applications and we want to show real life problems. So if you have some problems that you want to be able to solve with LCA, or you have some ways in which you have solved them and you'd like to be able to share that with the industry, please get in touch. And we'd like to include that, and we can work out how that can be best done. All right. Okay, so yeah, my email address is at the bottom, Lizzie at Marine Futures. I think it's also on the event site, so you can get in touch with me or with Ollie if you are interested in any of those things. Okay, this is probably what a lot of you have joined on here for and are quite interested to see. So here are some of our latest updates to the MarineShift360 tool. So I'll go through 4 core changes that have happened over the last 6 months. The first is some new license options. We've also introduced a data quality framework, a whole host of new data points, which I'll have a little look over for you. And then at the end, I also want to mention the RISE green sail feature, which is the IMOCA bespoke feature. Okay. License options. So you might have already noticed if you've accessed the website recently, there's a whole host of new options on there for licensing. The 2 main ones that I've highlighted here, the new ones, are the Education Lite and Education Pro. These are about making the LCA tool more accessible to students. So if you have an institution email address, you'll be able to access either the Education Lite, which is the more condensed free version, or the Education Pro, which is the more comprehensive paid for version. If for any reason you're a part of an institution or an academic institution and you don't have a specific email address, but you can prove that to us, get in touch and we can always help change that on the back end to ensure that you get the best license for you. A couple of other updates. The first one is that the Explorer, so the free version of the tool, now has an unlimited number of assessments under one project. This used to be capped, but now you can use as many assessments as you want. So you've got the opportunity to test out all of those templates and really work out what works for you. Obviously, some features are not available in this one, but to get a feel for the tool and to get a real understanding for LCA, this is a really good starting point. And then the last update is to the professional one. So we've actually reduced the costs significantly for the professional license. The reason for this is that we don't want cost to be a barrier. The cost of the professional license essentially covers the development of the tool and the data points that we access through EcoInvent. It's as low as we can get it because realistically we want to make sure that as many people as possible, as many organizations as possible are able to actually get on and actually use the tool. So yeah, that's something worth noting as well. Data quality framework. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding licensing as well, and we can cover them at the end. Data quality framework. So this one is actually driven by some feedback. Concerns that MarineShift360 was becoming a little bit of a black box. So everyone's putting in their data and then something's happening behind the scenes and we're receiving these impact outputs with no real understanding of what's actually happening in the tool. So to address this, we've introduced a new data quality framework to improve transparency, to give you more insight into the data behind your assessments. This framework evaluates every data point that you use across 5 key factors. So precision, how accurate is the background input data? Was it directly measured at the source, or is it based on kind of rough estimations? The inventory data time representativeness. So how recent is the primary data? Older data might not reflect current production methods, etc. And then database time representativeness, oh my goodness. How up to date is the background database that provides the primary input? So for example, in this case, is it from an older or more up-to-date version of EcoInvent? Technical representativeness, how well does the data point align with the actual technology being assessed? So for more innovative technologies, processes, do we have a data point that very accurately reflects that? And then finally, geographical representativeness. Is the data specific to a region or is it a global average? This can significantly impact results as environmental impacts vary from location to location. A big one for this is looking at electricity. Certain country, if you're looking at an EU average for electricity, it is going to be wildly different to if you're looking for a very specific country or even regional electricity grid mix. that can be even more specific if you start to looking at a specific energy provider. So there we go. So the idea, why does it matter? Because better data means that we can make better decisions. If we can understand the quality of the data, we can refine our sustainability strategies and ensure that we are measuring accurately the impact reduction efforts. And drive meaningful change, really. The main thing for this is how you can access it in the tool. So in the tool, there are two ways that you can access this information. The first one is downloading, and this is the easiest version, is you can download the references inventory explanation via the table view. So if you go to your project and then you go to dashboard, you then get the option to see it in table view. Once you go there, you'll find that at the top, there is a little button here for references, and you can download it as a report form. The report will look like this below. So you can see here is one data point. It describes the product system. So this is for recycled aluminium sheet. It tells you what the functional unit is, and then it puts in at the bottom any assumptions, so that if you really want to understand, you know what database it's come from, you know if there have been any assumptions made around that. And then at the end, it'll give you a quality rating, which is a rating out of 5. So that's the first way that you can see it. The other way that you can see it is that it will be included in an iOS report. So when you go to download your report, it's not included in the editable section of the reporting function, simply because it would take up a lot of space. But when you go to download the report, you can see here it's this inventory explanation. When you download the report, it will include a section that is about has all of these things, all of the detailed data points from the previous slide. So you can see here, it will be exactly the same format, but it will be included as a section in your report. So that's that. Hopefully that's helpful, and you guys get to have a little bit more insight into what goes on behind the scenes, behind the tool. But yeah, I think that leads us onto data points. So we're constantly updating data points. If there are data points that you ever need that you can't find on the tool, let us know. We're forever developing and identifying and adding new ones to the tool. So reach out, and I'm sure we'll be able to help you get that added on. I have categorized some of the latest ones from the last 6 to 12 months that we've uploaded. So some new ones on metals with different levels of recycled stainless steel content that have been added to expert templates and to the metal templates regarding with steel. Sales, this was added on as a part of the RISE green sale feature, but you've now got data points for like nylon Velcro, metal zips, plastic zips. Fuel, there's a series of different new fuel additions, so biodiesel, HVO, and there's a new hydrogen as well. It's worth noting that there is a significant difference between the different types of biodiesel or different types of HVO. The feedstock that goes into that is a really significant factor in the impact. If you're using a waste material, for example, for HVO, if you're using a waste cooking oil or waste forestry waste, that's going to have a significantly lower than if you're using palm oil, for example. So that's something to make sure that you understand about your assessments before you select the fuel type. Make sure you know where that source is coming from. And then electricity, we've added in here recently Sri Lanka, as requested by one of our boat builders. If you have a location that you'd like to add that isn't on there, please let us know and we will add it in. Lamination, we've actually split lamination infusion into 2 separate data points. So one being for a one-off large part, and then the other one being for a production part. And then machinery, so added in a couple of data points for air conditioning units and water maker. If you want to see when things have been updated, you can really easily go to help and support when you access the tool, and then there's a section that says latest updates. Every time we update any of the data points or we add any new data points, they'll be visible in here with the date that they were added. So if you need to have a look and make sure that you're keeping up to date, you don't have to wait for our webinars every quarter. You can just go and have a look in here, and that will have all of the tool updates in there for you. Okay, I'm going to very quickly cover off the RISE green sail feature because we're going to go into it in a little bit more detail in the next section. But yeah, the RISE feature is a new addition to the tool, and it's available to members of the RISE certification scheme that is managed by the IMOCA class. So most of you on this call won't be able to actually see this. So we're going to be giving you a little bit of behind the scenes. This new feature allows participating users to calculate the impact of their IMOCA sales and visualize the results within a sort of predefined scoring criteria. What they do is they score those sales between A and G based on the amount of CO2 that they are responsible for. The feature also allows participating users to request an audit and have their LCA audited online. External auditors can score their submission based on a formal methodology before issuing the certification. The reason that this is really interesting and that we want to kind of share more about it in the next section is because it's all about customization. Like the idea behind MarineShift is that we are creating something that is customizable. No organization, no like scope and boundary is exactly the same for two organizations. So what we want to do is make sure that if you're looking to create something that is very specific to a problem or a project that you're working on, there are ways of customizing the tool to make it work for you in the most efficient way possible. Yeah, IMOCA, the RISE program is a really good example of how we can engage specific criteria and specific requirements and adapt the tool to reflect that and make that process significantly easier. Okay. Apologies if I'm talking too fast. I feel like maybe I am. Please put something in the chat if you need me to slow down. But yeah, we'll now move on to the second section. If you have any questions on any of the updates above, chuck them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end or hold on to them and feel free to say them out loud later. Okay, so unlocking the power of LCA. So in the context of the IMOCA RISE scheme, what is the RISE program? Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might not have done. RISE stands for Reduce Impact Sail Evaluation. And the aim of it, the objective, is to reduce the environmental impact of sail production for IMOCA class yachts. Simple as. Ollie in a second, I'm going to hand over to Ollie in a second. He's going to give you a little overview of exactly what we at MarineShift360 have been doing with IMOCA, but to give you a little bit of context, in 2021, the class launched the Green Sail Rule, which was voted in, which was kind of the very beginning of that journey. From then, in 2022, we began the process of calculating the initial life cycle assessments to understand the environmental impact of sail production and identify some key areas for improvement. In 2023, the rule was formally introduced, requiring each team to have at least one green sail amongst the 8 authorised sail during races. This means that it's rated A to C in an A to G rating system. And additionally, at this time, IMOCA also decided to ban air freight for sail delivery to reduce emissions from the supplier down to the final customer. 2024 RISE platform was introduced, which is what we're going to talk a bit more about today, to formalise the scoring system and provide a really structured way to assess and compare sail impacts. And then in 2024 was also the first version of the impact reduction rule, which is less about sails and more about the whole boats. So how can we take the learnings from the green sail rule and from the RISE platform, and how can we extend that to the boat as a whole? So the new rule required all IMOCA boats to be built from 2025 to achieve a minimum impact reduction of 60 tonnes of CO2. And then this finally comes through to 2025, so this year, where the RISE certification will be formally launched to ensure compliance with the EU Green Claims Directive, with the aim of reinforcing transparency and accountability in sustainability claims. Make sure that what IMOCA is saying they are doing is what they're doing, and make sure that all of the claims that we make are backed up as well behind the scenes. So, Ollie, I'm going to quickly hand over to you so that you don't get too sick of my voice.
Cool, thanks, Lizzie. That's great. So yeah, this is a really interesting set of rules that the class has brought into vote and they've now been approved. But this slide is looking at a specific process that was followed. So the RISE scheme is a certification scheme. So there's kind of specific criteria that we have to meet by developing the scheme, and then participants of the scheme, to ensure that what they're doing is correct, it's been assured, it's been audited, and it works. So that began, as Lizzie said, with getting baseline data for a range of different sail makers who are participating in the programme, to start looking at where are the hotspots, where does the impact lie, and what could we change. To do that, you needed a centrally aligned scope and boundary, so making sure that what we're studying across individual sail makers is completely identical, so it's fair to compare those sails against each other from the different makers. What we realized, because the goal was to create a certification standard where, you know, all of the sails fall within this, we had to create a methodology. The methodology was finished last November, which is a fairly lengthy document, which essentially gives the recipe for how you need to conduct one of these LCAs, and every single bit of information, the data quality, scope and boundaries aligned, all that sort of stuff. And the really great news is that the assurance came through from a external peer review last week or 2 weeks ago. So the methodology has now been assured and is in compliance with ISO 14044 and ISO 14067. We're obviously at a bit of a transitionary point in Europe around legislation, where we're moving towards the Green Claims Directive. So it's not in law yet, but it's looking likely that it's not far off. So we also designed this scheme and the way the method statement works to comply with the Green Claims Directive. It's not entirely clear how that's going to roll out in the future with things like the verification by notary bodies, but we've set the scheme up so it will fully comply as and when that legislation comes in. So once we've got the method assured, we're now moving into the phase where all of the data is getting entered into the tool. So every IMOCA sail that is produced from May onwards this year will have to go through the RISE certification scheme. So it's a large number of sails, and that, although the rule only stipulates there's kind of a minimum number that have to be carried on board, the goal long term is that every single IMOCA sail produced will go through this process, and it will have to be within a C or lower grading. And the grading system is broadly based on the impact of a kilogram of finished sail mass. And the CO2 that is produced for that. So it's a very clear, transparent way. The functional unit is the same across all sail makers. And what's really interesting with this scheme is it's already driving significant innovation within the sail makers, where they've understood exactly where the impact exists, and they're now taking actions to significantly reduce. And we're seeing with certain sail makers in the range of kind of 30 to 50% reductions in the impact of the sail produced. So it's a nice example of LCA actually having a real world impact reduction. The fourth kind of element of this scheme of certification is there needs to be a very robust audit process in place to make sure no one's bending the rules or the information is incorrect. So there's a two-stage audit on the certification scheme. So every single sail that comes through gets digitally audited against known baselines and averages for material inputs, energy consumption, consumable usage. And then there's annual on-site physical audits with every participating sail maker. So we go in and we physically check that the way energy is being produced is correct. The material masses are all in balance with what's being entered in the system. The way waste is being handled at the end of life is accurate and aligns with what's been submitted within the LCAs. So yeah, it's a very rigorous process. It's taken a long time to get to this point, but I think the point we would like to make is, one, the tool is very customizable, and we are always looking for user feedback in how we could improve the tool to make your lives easier in reducing impact. And you know, it clearly shows with this scheme, it's having a real world impact reduction. And you know, I applaud the IMOCA class for bringing this whole scheme to life.
Yeah, thank you, Ollie. Yeah, it's such a great case study, and I think to actually be able to see the way that it's progressing and the opportunities in the future for how this is going to hopefully impact the entire IMOCA class. We're not just going to be looking at one or two sails, but all of their sails and hopefully their boat builds as well. Okay, so let me show you. Yeah, so starting with scope and boundary. So this is the kind of diagram some of you might be very familiar with, maybe too familiar, and some of you might not have seen this much at all. So this is a scope and boundary sort of process outline. So what this shows is that the process that we're going through that is being reviewed in the IMOCA case study. So you can see here in the middle, I don't know if you can see my mouse, hopefully you can. But we go through each of the stages of the manufacturing process. So we've got the first stage up here, which is our membrane manufacturing. So we go through what raw materials are you accessing, all the way through how those are transported to the factory, what utilities are inputted. So that's your fuel, energy, water, and your waste materials. What happens to those at the end of life? And we essentially repeat that kind of process for every stage of the production process. So raw materials and auxiliary materials. So what consumables do you use? Vacuum bags, peel ply, rubber gloves, whatever it may be, paintbrushes. They're your auxiliary materials. We've got material upstream transport, and then that goes into the finishing in this section, which is the sail making, hardware, signage, and then you've got all your utilities and your end of life. You'll notice two key things that are outside of this system boundary, which is outlined here. One is the use phase. At the moment, instead of including the use phase in there, the reason that IMOCA haven't is because there isn't enough data. It's hard to know whether there's a significant difference in the use case of a sail if it's used for one use and it gets broken, or it gets used for 3 seasons and is out on the water all the time. So there's a big variety in how much they're used, and realistically at the moment there isn't the data to understand that fully. So what IMOCA are introducing at this is a button scheme. So the button system is going to track the sails throughout their lifespan in races, and it's going to collect long-term data to improve future assessments. So the idea is, if we can track what happens to all of these sails, how often they're used, if they're maintained, what their lifespan is, then we can start including the use phase accurately within the assessments. And then the last part is end of life, the end of the life for the finished sail. This is still under development, but we've included the end of life waste materials, and then the hope is that IMOCA will be able to, once we get past the use phase as well, we'll be able to introduce end of life information into these assessments. It's all about making sure that it's comparable, not just for between sail makers, but also between sails. The reason we outline this in so much detail is because even if whether you're making a jib or a mainsail, it's important that we're able to compare the impact, and that's where the functional unit comes into effect. As Ollie mentioned, we are looking at 1 kilogram, like what's the CO2 emissions from 1 kilogram of sail. So it doesn't matter whether you've got a 100 kilo or a 20 kilo sail, it doesn't matter, because we're only comparing the impact of 1 kilo, and that allows us to compare and to rate sails across all of the different sizes, all the different types, so that you know that you're able to be like, this jib is a B grade sail, and this mainsail is a C grade sail, and you can compare them despite the differences in the size and the material use. What else is I going to mention in this? But yeah, the key is that by clearly defining what we're measuring and why, we can ensure that we've got consistency, transparency, and accuracy in assessing the environmental impacts of the IMOCA sails. Over time, the RISE system will continue to refine these boundaries to improve long-term decision making. That's our boundaries then. So you can also see that this is a cradle to gate LCA scope. Sometimes it's referred to by IMOCA as a cradle to client because of the information that they're including with restricting air freight between their transportation from the factory gates to the user. But yeah, it's a cradle to gate assessment, and hopefully in the future it will be something that is extended all the way from cradle to grave. Okay, the assured methodology. So Ollie mentioned briefly that we've just had the assurance through on the methodology on this, which is really important. The methodology was developed to measure and reduce the environmental impact of the IMOCA racing sails, and it provides a structured approach which ensures clarity and transparency. So the methodology clearly defines how sail makers input data into MarineShift, and this makes sure that it's a standardized process, because we've got loads of stakeholders that are involved in this, and they need to have realistically a guideline to follow to make sure that they're putting the right data in the right places. Reproducibility. By documenting the exact steps for data collection, other sailmakers can follow the same approach. It's consistent, comparable results. The idea of the methodology is it's to make things easier for everybody. Accountability. So the audit framework is included in the methodology, and it's built to verify compliance and uphold the integrity of the data submitted. So we can always say the data is good, but realistically, unless somebody is checking that, you can't be sure. So it is about making sure that everything is audited, so that every claim that we make is verified. Yeah, guidance. So even for those who have only just started on LCA, some sailmakers may not have come across it before. The methodology acts as a guideline, as guidance on how they can perform the assessment, and gives them sort of step-by-step support throughout it. And then finally, assurance. By writing out a clear methodology, we can actually provide it to an independent expert to peer review, to ensure that the methodology is scientifically sound and that the conclusions are valid. But why does assurance matter? I've kind of mentioned it there, but yeah, the methodology has been assured via a rigorous independent review, which is essential for the programme. It ensures credibility. So the independent review means that scientifically and technically it's valid. Transparency ensures the methodology is robust and reliable, that when you read it, that it's covering all of the important things and there's nothing excluded that would be really influential to the programme. Compliance. So we've already mentioned ISO and the EU Green Claims Directive. To ensure that it aligns with those, it has to be verified by a third party. And then trust. We're asking for quite a lot of work from sailmakers here. They are having to take an extra step in their process, and they need to know that they're not the only ones doing it, and that the work they're putting into their assessment is being replicated by other sailmakers, and that they can trust that everybody is following the same guidelines and that everybody's actually getting things done. And it also means that everyone can trust in the claims that are being made. So with enough about greenwashing these days, and it's good to make sure that actually the sailors, clients, like viewers, people interested in the sport can trust the numbers that are being given out during this scheme. One of the things we mentioned was the EU Green Claims Directive. To give a little bit more detail on this, so it came into effect in March 2024 to protect consumers and promote informed decision making. All EU member states will be required to turn this into a national law by 2026. So as Ollie mentioned, we're still kind of in that transition stage. So it's not 100% certain how that will be reflected in the laws come next year. But it's likely that it's going to apply to all organisations with more than 10 employees or more than €2 million revenue. So we're looking at a lot of businesses here that are going to be impacted by the Green Claims Directive. It's a really strict set of rules to prevent greenwashing. The reason for that is that lots of brands continue to mislead consumers by exaggerating sustainability. The law is going to ensure claims are scientifically backed up, transparent, and comparable across industries. So you can see this image here is a prime example of it. But yeah, research was carried out in Europe in 2022 and found that 42% of green claims were exaggerated, false, or deceptive. And that doesn't help any of us. We're all in a position where we're trying to drive forwards sustainability, and if you can't tell what people are doing is right or wrong, it gives a bad name to everybody trying to do something good. So what this is going to do is, how is it going to fix it? So it's essentially ensuring that scientific proof is required for all environmental claims. If you are going to say that this reduces my impact by XYZ, you need to be able to show it. The claims that need to be independently verified. Vague terms are being removed, so no more eco-friendly, climate neutral without measurable proof. Comparisons need to be fair and evidence-based. It's easy to compare one thing with another, but if they're completely different shapes, sizes, and manufacturing processes, and the LCA is measured in completely different ways, it's not a fair comparison. And then all claims evidence need to be publicly available. on the claimant's website so that anybody can go in and understand what's being said and why that claim is being made. And they have the opportunity to really decide for themselves whether that informs their purchasing decisions. But yeah, the goal is to protect consumers, to encourage credible sustainability efforts, and to create a level playing field for businesses that are actually making real environmental progress. Okay, a little bit. Here's actually what the green sale feature looks like in the tool. The template itself is a specific template. You can see here it would be listed on your project overview amongst all of your other templates, so your composite parts and sales. There's a specific one for IMOCA that the members of this certification will be able to view. And it's built to outline with the scope, boundaries, methodology that I mentioned earlier. You can see a little screenshot here of what it looks like. It covers your primary materials, auxiliary materials, utilities and transportation. Very similar setup to a lot of the other templates. It's not we're not reinventing the wheel here. But what the key thing that's different is here you can see that there's a button that says GS source. So that's the green sale score. And what that allows sailmakers to do is to immediately access in real time not only the impact of their sale, but the functional impact of the functional unit of their sale. So the impact of 1 kilogram of their sale, which is noted here. And then it gives them their rating as well. So this is a pre-audit rating, so that it's useful for two reasons. One, it allows them to know where their sale that they've just made is going to be ranked in terms of where it's likely to be ranked pending audit. But then the other one is it gives them an opportunity to test new designs and new sales and see where they would rank without high cost or high workload going into it. So they can really quickly test out, try different sale designs, see how if it impacts their grading, and therefore whether it's something that is financially advantageous for them to pursue. It's also the direct place. So here you can see at the bottom, you can send to audit. They have a direct link to send that for the digital audit, immediately from the LCA tool, which is very useful. And then what happens then is the audit will come through and they will give you a score, either rated higher, rated lower, hopefully rated the same, and they'll be able to provide their comments as to any changes that have been expected. Which leads us nicely onto my last slide about this. Thank you for listening in. The RISE audit process has 2 audits functions, as Ollie mentioned. So the first one is a digital audit. That is for every sale that's made. Every sale that's made that receives a rating has been audited to ensure that there is this is to ensure that all of the correct points have been included, so that it's a fully comprehensive LCA, and to ensure that there's no air freight that's been included or being used, and that all of the data entries are accurate and in line with industry expectations. If they're wildly out, they seem massively different, that's when we'd reach out to suppliers to find out exactly why that is. And then finally, the physical audit. So physical audits will take place both at the factories that make the sail membranes, but also at the sail lofts where assembly takes place. They will verify material inputs by weighing samples, observe waste handling and treatment processes, check energy consumption records at each production stage to make sure they're accurate, and then review transport invoices to understand what those are as well. But yeah, same as with assurance, the audits ensure credibility, transparency, compliance, and trust. That is everything from this section. I'm aware I've gone a little bit over time, but we've got 10 more minutes to answer any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see everybody a bit better. Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions? I haven't been looking at the chat.
Yeah, so no one has been brave enough to put anything in the Q&A, but I've just switched everyone's ability to come off mute if anyone's brave enough to ask questions, or perhaps that was so comprehensive, no questions are required.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation, really interesting. I'm a student from TU Delft in the Netherlands, studying product design, and I'm currently writing my thesis. The topic is the future of the optimist in a circular economy. And my main research question right now is why and when a boat becomes obsolete. And I wanted to ask if you're planning on implementing any cradle-to-cradle methodologies in your LCA tool as well, so beyond cradle-to-gate, so the potential for reuse, recycling, recovery.
Yeah, very good question. So the answer is yes. We're currently experimenting in the test version of the tool, adding a circularity metric, which would score a product between 0 and 1. So it's kind of aligned to the Ellen MacArthur material circularity indicator method. There's lots of challenges around implementing that within the LCA tool. So we haven't got it to a point where we're 100% confident that there's enough background data with all the materials in the database, but also the way you then interface as a user. So we are completely on board with the concept of being able to score circularity. We're still working through the technical challenges of bringing that into an LCA tool. So yeah, I'd love to take that conversation offline, hear more about your research and perhaps how you're calculating that, because yeah, really interesting, but some technical challenge with implementing it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? And equally, if no one feels comfortable speaking up now, do get in touch with us after the call, send us an email. Very happy to handle questions that way as well.
Yeah, I'm just dropping my email address and Ollie's in the chat in case you want to be able to reach out afterwards. I think we might actually have received some questions. Did we receive some questions before the call as well from some people?
Yeah, although there was actually, I can see Elena, sorry if I've mispronounced your name there. We would need to use the software already available to estimate our emissions. We obviously have a hard time calculating emission factor for some typical materials. Would the emissions factors for individual materials be available on MarineShift360, e.g. 1 kilogram of vacuum bag is X kilos of CO2? So yes. The answer is about 70% of our database comes from EcoInvent, 30% are what we call hybrid data points, where we have used industry averages. We've gone out and collected the primary data for lots of typical lamination processes, for example. So asking there around a vacuum bag, we have that in the tool already under some of the lamination data points, where we've gone and worked out at a kind of top level resin infused lamination process uses per square meter of part, uses a certain amount of peel ply, a certain amount of vacuum bag, injection tubes. We've accounted for the electricity consumption of the pump running for a period of time to pull the vacuum on the part. So yes, all of that information is easily accessible within the tool. Cool. No other questions?
No, nice and quiet. Makes me feel like maybe we covered everything.
I have one more very practical question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go.
If I sign up for the Educational Lite program, is it possible to change it to Educational Pro later on without losing the data?
Yes, yeah, very simple. It's we just need to sort the payment basically for the cost for the pro version of the license, and we upgrade it in the back end, so you'll retain all of the information you've already got within your account.
Okay, perfect. And the test version that you just mentioned before, is that out there to test as well, or is that internal development?
For the circularity metric, that's
Yes.
currently only internal testing.
Okay,
unfortunately.
I understand, yeah.
Good. Okay, I think we'll probably call it there, Lizzie. I mean, our intention is to run a webinar at least once a quarter moving forward. So if you've got any ideas or particular areas of LCA, if it's sensitivity or uncertainty or whatever the unique area of this discipline you'd like to understand more, then please send us your suggestions and we can look to cover that in future webinars.
We have actually got a couple more questions now in the
Oh, good.
just to make sure we're going all the way to the end of time. So can we provide a typical report for us to have an example? So in the tool, I'm assuming this is what you mean. In the tool, you can actually export the report. What it is a reporting function, gives you all of the sections that need to be included. Some of the information is automatically pulled in from the tool, from your data. And then there are other sections like an executive summary where it gives you space to edit that on the tool. So it is in fact a template for you to use in itself. It doesn't have an example, but there are lots, there are example sections in there that you can add to. I don't know, Ollie, do we have any examples that we can share as like a separate thing to follow?
Yes, we do. We can take that offline. Very happy to share some reports. The way the report is set up in the tool, even the what's called the default report, will give you quite a lot of examples of the types of data and statements that you need to make at specific sections to align to the ISO standard. So it's probably best to look at that part first. If you need further information, I've got some draft reports I can share.
Easy. And then I hope that answers your question. Please put a note in the chat if it doesn't, or email us. And then the last comment is, do we plan to have updates about the methodology of calculation of the impacts environmental footprint methodology, European Commission, for example?
Yes. So short answer to that is we're currently still sticking to ISO 14044 with our 3 characterization methods within that. We are working in the background with a number of organizations to look at what a future-proof methodology would be for the wider industry at global level. So we're very aware of like European boating industry's kind of PEFCR compliant methodology that they've been working on for the last year. So watch this space. I can't say anything at the minute, but we are looking to change the methodology to remain fully relevant with latest European and global legislation. So it will come in the future.
Perfect. Well, yeah, we've got 1 minute to go, so I think that's probably the end. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been really great to have you all on the call. I hope you found it useful. Please get in touch if you've got any further questions. And yeah, as Ollie said, we'll be doing one of these every quarter. If there's specific sections that you want this to be about, please get in touch. We're totally down to change it to fit your needs, and whoever comes to us with the best ideas will get a full webinar. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.